About 6 months ago, I decided to get one of those doorbell cameras that monitor movement on your doorstep. They allow you to see when people are at your door. I've lived in my current neighborhood for about 3 years, and it's a fairly populated area. Plus, my wife and I recently had our first child, so I thought it would be a good idea to finally get one. I installed the camera, and I got an app to go with it so I would be alerted of movement wherever I was. The first night after installing it, I woke up at about 2 in the morning to a notification on the app that there was movement at my front door. I was really surprised to see this. I opened the app and looked to see what it was. I just about had a heart attack when I saw a man's head extremely close to the camera. Then I recognized the man. It was my next door neighbor, Dan. He was making a really strange face in the camera. I was a little confused, but then I figured that Dan had probably seen the camera being installed and decided to come over and play a prank on me. He was walking around looking at the camera the entire time and making strange and goofy faces. Then, after about 5 minutes of doing so, he walked away. I didn't know Dan all that well, but we had spoken a few times, and I went back to bed feeling much more relaxed than when I had woken up. I had planned to go over to Dan's the next day to talk to him, but when I woke up the next morning, I forgot all about it. I didn't really think about it at all until several days later when I was up late watching TV on a Friday night and got the notification again that there was movement at my front door. Once again, when I opened the app, I saw my neighbor Dan, but this time he wasn't making silly and weird faces. This time he had an angry look on his face and was just pointing at the camera. I figured he had to be joking once again, and I walked over to the front door to surprise him. I opened the door, and he ran away, sprinting through my yard, and then jumped over the short fence dividing our yards from each other. I thought it was very strange, but again, I didn't know Dan all that well, so maybe this was his sense of humor. The next day, I remembered it, and decided to go talk to Dan. I knocked on his door, and when he answered, I told him that I liked his joke. He looked confused and asked me what I was talking about. I explained to him what I had seen on my camera. He told me he never went to my house at night and still didn't know what I was talking about. I told him I had proof and then showed him the video. He looked surprised to see it and told me he had no memory of it at all and then apologized. I told him it was all right and then went back home. I'm not sure if I believe Dan or not, but since then, he hasn't been back, and I hope he doesn't. The story I'm about to tell you is by far the creepiest thing to ever happen to me. I've had a doorbell camera for several years now. I never had anything strange happen with it. I would only get notifications for normal things like mail deliveries and door-to-door salesmen. That is, until several weeks ago. One night, I was in my home office sitting at my computer fairly late at night when I got a notification that there was action detected at my front door. I clicked to see what it was because I wasn't expecting anything this late at night. When I got on the app, I saw that there was nothing there. My front porch appeared to be completely empty. I found it a little strange, and I was a little concerned. I knew whatever alerted my camera must have left before I could see it, but when I watched back to see when the camera was first activated by motion, there was still nothing. I decided after that it must have been a glitch with the camera, even though nothing like that had ever happened in the years that I had it. I went back to work and finished up, then I got ready for bed. When I was about to get in bed, I received another notification from the app. Once again, when I clicked it, I saw that nothing was there. I just ignored it and got in bed and closed my eyes to sleep. But not even 5 minutes later, I could hear my phone vibrate on the nightstand and saw another notification about my doorbell camera. I decided to go look and see what was causing the camera to seemingly malfunction. I thought maybe a spider or something I couldn't see was repeatedly activating the motion detector. I went out my front door onto the porch and looked at the camera. There was no visible causes for what was happening. No spider webs or leaves or anything near the camera at all. I just shook my head and then went back inside. I was considering disabling notifications for the app or calling customer service, but I decided to just go to bed instead and take care of it in the morning. I got in bed again and laid down under the covers. About 30 seconds later, I heard my phone vibrate yet again. I ignored it and kept laying there. But then I heard a pounding at my front door. It was very loud, not even a knocking, but a literal pounding. It sounded like someone was throwing their entire body at my door repeatedly. This time, I grabbed my phone and opened the app once again, expecting to finally see what was causing the noise. But to my surprise, there was still nothing. I couldn't believe my eyes, so I ran to the front door. The pounding was still going on, but as I approached the door, it stopped. I looked out the window and still saw nothing. I was extremely creeped out and didn't know what to do, so I called the police. They came to my house, but obviously saw nothing, so I basically just filled out a report, and they told me they would patrol the area that night, which made me feel a little safer. It took me a long time to go to sleep that night, but I had no more notifications on the app at all. The next day, I called and reported the situation to customer service. They were able to get me a new camera to replace the old one, but I still have no explanation whatsoever for what caused the pounding that I heard that night. I live in a neighborhood that's sort of out in the country. There isn't much action out here, but I recently got a Ring doorbell app anyways. It shows me an angle where I can see who's at the front door as well as part of the front yard. I got it more so to see the animals like deer, raccoon, or maybe even bears that are known to be in the area. The first couple of weeks after it was installed, I didn't get much action on it, but I saw a few animals. Then one night, I awoke at about 3 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't sure what woke me up. I looked at my phone to check the time and saw there was a notification from the Ring app. It said activity had been detected. I opened the app expecting to see a deer or something, but I could have never imagined what I saw. There was about 10 men standing outside my front door in the yard, about 30 feet away. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I had to do a double take. I didn't know who these men were and why they were in my front yard. It was one of the strangest things I had ever seen. I slowly walked out of my bedroom and into the living room. Then I looked out the window. The men were all standing facing my house in a line, and they all had pretty blank expressions on their faces, but I couldn't see them all that well in the dark. Most were wearing jackets, and nobody was really moving much. The only light was coming from the light by my front door, and it was just enough to see the men. I stood at an angle where I didn't let them see me, and I wasn't sure what to do. I stood there just watching them, debating if I should go outside or call the police or what. I knew there was a lot of men and only one of me, so if they wanted trouble, I would be outnumbered. I was trying to think of any logical explanations of what they were doing, but I really couldn't think of any at all. I stood there in fear for about 20 minutes, but it felt like a lot longer. The men didn't move much at all the whole time. Finally, one of the men turned around, and then all of them followed, and they slowly walked into the woods on the side of my yard. I stayed up for another hour after that, constantly checking my windows and my Ring app. Eventually, I was able to get back to sleep. I still wonder all the time what was going on that night. It always gives me the creeps to think about it.